Let's talk some chess. This is not a matchup that you get to see every day. It's Magnus Carlsen, one of the greatest chess players of all time, versus Bill Gates, one of the richest people in the history of the world. This game was played in 2014. It was played on a talk show, so sort of a fun little matchup. Magnus has 30 seconds on the clock to try to make it fair. Bill Gates has 2 minutes on the clock, and we'll just take a second and appreciate Mr. Gates' willingness to do this. It's obviously no small feat to play Magnus in any setting, but on a live talk show with the lights and the cameras on and you know the cameras rolling, certainly a tall task. So respect to him for stepping up to this game. I'll link the video of the actual game below so you can watch sort of how it unfolded. But in this video, we're just going to talk about how the game went down, analyze the moves and the pieces and the position. So Bill opens us up with e4. We have knight to c6 by Magnus, and now knight to f3 by Bill. So two very solid moves to start. We can infer that Bill Gates has some, I don't know his rating or his elo, but we can infer he has some general understanding of chess. He's controlling the center and he's developing his pieces, and this is all good so far. Here, Magnus plays d5, and this sort of speaks to a broader theme that we'll see throughout this game. Magnus has 30 seconds on the clock, so he doesn't have time to mess around with developing and playing slow and playing for the end game. He's trying to attack and be aggressive and win now. So this d5 move obviously threatens the pawn on e4. And instead of capturing back and allowing Magnus's queen to come onto d5 with tempo, Bill Gates here plays bishop to d3. It's really weird to say Bill Gates plays, but Bill Gates plays d3, bishop to d3. Still not used to that. So this protects the pawn on e4, and Magnus doesn't take it yet. He plays knight to f6, developing another piece and now adding pressure to this e4 pawn. So if you ignore this threat, let's say you just castle here, then pawn takes on e4, forking the bishop and the knight. So again, kudos to Bill Gates. He sees this and just captures on d5. This does allow queen takes on d5, and now Magnus has these three pieces really nicely developed and looking pretty dangerous. So you have to be careful here. And first, another really solid move by Mr. Gates. He plays knight to c3, developing a piece with tempo because this attacks the queen on d5, but Magnus just swings it over to h5, where it sort of will lurk dangerously and threaten the king side if Gates does decide to castle king side. And I won't keep you in suspense. He does. He castles king side on the next move, and this is totally fine. This is a very solid defensive structure. It does look a little bit spooky with the two knights and the queen and the bishop ready to join in the game, but this is okay. You have a great pawn structure. You have a knight and a queen and other pieces that are developed, so you can defend here with proper defending. If you can do it on a talk show against Magnus is another question, which we will answer pretty shortly. So here Magnus plays bishop to g4, developing a piece, pinning the knight to the queen. So basically eliminating this knight on f3, which is usually a very good defensive piece when you castle king side. Essentially eliminating the knight because the knight, of course, cannot move or the queen will be captured. And here, Gates makes his first mistake of the game. He plays h3, trying to force the bishop to either capture the knight or move away from the square. The proper move here is just to play bishop to e2, clocking up this diagonal, breaking the pin of the knight to the queen, and meeting a bishop and queen battery with a bishop and queen battery of your own. So this is the proper way to proceed. But instead, he plays h3, again, asking Magnus, okay, are you going to capture? Are you going to retreat the bishop? And Magnus says, I'm going to do neither. Magnus plays knight to e5, and remember, he has to play super aggressive. He has no time basically on the clock. He needs to go for a quick win. So he invites Bill to capture the bishop on g4. And that's exactly what Bill does. And kudos here to, we've seen very solid moves for the most part from Bill Gates so far. This is the correct move. I think I would be scared to play this because you're playing against Magnus and you don't want to fall for any traps. But this is the correct defensive move. You're totally winning here with the black pieces. You've won a piece, and now you just have to defend and get out of this situation where the knights and the queen are bearing down on the king. So here, of course, the idea behind this sacrifice that Magnus just made is that the H file is now open, and now the queen is going to try to get in and combine with the knights to deliver some sort of check or win material, or even potentially deliver checkmate. So here Magnus plays knight f takes on g4, deciding to capture with this knight instead of this knight, and we'll see why in a moment. And now it's the really critical defensive. You need the right defensive move here with the white pieces. So take a second and see if you can find the right move to continue the game against Magnus Carlsen. Okay, So this is a bit tricky, and I think this is what Magnus was sort of thinking when he played this knight to g4 move. The first impression you have is, yes, this queen and this knight are teaming up on h2, but let's say you ignore that threat and just play maybe b3, preparing to fianchetto your bishop. This knight to h2 is not checkmate, and it's not checkmate because the knight on f3 defends h2, knight takes queen, knight takes knight, king takes knight, and now white is just up a ton of material, up a queen, up a bishop, and that's totally fine. So basically, I think Magnus was thinking Bill wouldn't take this threat seriously because of the knight on f3, but that would be a mistake. Here, if you play b3, Magnus has checkmate in just 2 moves. You have knight takes on f3 with check, so the king is under check. You can't move to the h-file because the queen is controlling the h-file. And now whatever you take back with the queen or the pawn doesn't matter. The next move is queen to h2, and this is checkmate because there's no longer a pawn on f3 protecting the h2 square. So I think that's the trick that Magnus was going for. He didn't believe that Gates would take this threat seriously. He wouldn't see the checkmate in 2 from this knight. But in fact, Magnus was too worried. He didn't need to be worried at all because here Gates actually plays, he not only doesn't see the threat, he plays an even worse move. He captures the knight on e5 with his knight, I guess trying to win back some material, maybe, you know, pinning this knight to the queen on h5. Maybe that's the idea. But this, of course, abandons the defense of the h2 square, and now Magnus can simply just play queen to h2 with checkmate, and the game is over. And Bill Gates was like, oh my god, oh no, he realized right away, you know, he was a really good sport about it. Again, kudos to him for playing this game. It's not easy, of course, to play Magnus, and it's not easy to play when the cameras are rolling, as I said, so kudos to him. But just a kind of a funny combination, because I'm sure Magnus was thinking, okay, you know, he's going to play some other move, and then I can do this combination, and this will be checkmate. But instead, Bill just helped Magnus out and just moved the knight away, and then left the h2 square undefended. So kind of a funny ending in that sense. The correct move here, which Magnus actually talked about after the game, is rook to e1, and this allows the king to escape on f1, and now there's no real threat in the position. This combination doesn't work anymore if knight takes on f3 with check. Not pawn takes, but queen takes on f3, and now after queen to h2 check, the king can run away to f1, and there's no other checks that work. You can't get to f2, and f2 is guarded anyways by the white queen. If you move to h1, the king just keeps running away, and now you're just up a ton of material with the white pieces, and you are totally fine. So that's that was the proper way to defend, and Magnus, you know, sort of said that. But again, just a fun little game to discuss. So I think that's everything. Thanks for watching. I'll link the full video below. Again, thanks to both of these players for giving us this fun game. You know, we shouldn't analyze it, think about it too much, because again, it's just a fun short-timed game, and hopefully we see more games between celebrities and great players, because they are really fun. It's really fun to see when the chess world meets the pop culture world, and so. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Drop a like, drop subscribe. Let me know of any other games you'd like me to review, and we'll see you next time.